Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 1871 podcast. And with everything that is going on with the ownership and the takeover at Reading FC, and the fact that we have a Chinese owner, we thought it might be a good idea to explore the differences in Chinese business culture compared to the way of doing business in the UK, the USA, and other countries. Because as far as we understand, our current owner, Dai Young, he does want to sell the club. That's the statement that's come out. So it'd be really interesting to sort of look into how Chinese culture works, Chinese business culture, and how that compares to other countries. And to help us with that, I'm really delighted to say that I'm joined for this episode by a Chinese business expert. So a very warm welcome to Sunny Shen. Thank you for joining me, Sunny.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me. I will be interested to share my experience and let's see how it will go.
Yeah, well, I think it's a topic that many Reading fans will be interested in
Mm.
because um, we were convinced that we were about to have a new owner, American
Mm-hmm.
owner, um, but that fell through a couple of weeks ago. So we're really interested to look into not only business culture, but the psychology of doing business and how it might be different in different parts of the world. So just for context, Sunny, you're in China at the moment, so you're quite a few hours ahead of us. So really appreciate you giving up your time. Can you just summarize as Chinese a business consultant dealing with Chinese businesses, what services you provide and how you work?
In short, I help foreign companies to deal with problems they encountered in China. No matter they already in China or they have business activities in China and they are outside China. Basically, I am providing operational support for them, which means I help them to handle actual problems they may encounter when dealing with business partners or suppliers in China. So I can say I am a China business consultant for them, basically. So I give them business advice accordingly based on the problems and situations they are having. Also, I help them solve problem. I'm not just giving them advice. I help them to solve the practical problems efficiently. So I offer business consulting, communication, as well as supply management services for customers both inside China and outside China. So that's what I do.
So thanks for that summary,
Mm,
which I think really helps to give some context to this topic because
mm,
um, our current owner, as I say, is Chinese. He's owned the club, Reading Football Club, since 2017. So he said that he wants to sell the club. Um, this has been going on for quite a while, as many business deals, do. They can take a long time.
mhm.
And you deal regularly with businesses in other countries and help them in their dealings with companies in China. Is that right?
Actually, I we can say in this way. It depends what kind of problems they are having. I basically help. I basically support their operations in China. No matter they are having a meeting with the business partner, and they are facing the language barrier, or they need a third party opinion about those meetings and want to understand maybe something what's not being said. We can say this way, because in Chinese way is sometimes you need to read between the lines. We don't say everything like so frankly and directly. So sometimes you need to understand underneath the words being said and then what's not being said. So that's what I do. I help them to understand the situation to make better decisions.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and we've as I say, we had a period of a few months when there was a consultation between a potential new owner who's
Mm-hmm.
American, you know, trying to buy a football club, you know, an organization from from a Chinese businessman. So
Uh-huh.
that's really interesting that you said sometimes you have to read between the lines and not everything is said directly, which I think is probably my, you know, my understanding is that is quite different from, for example, the way an American businessman or woman might approach a business deal, to be a bit more direct. So you're a translator as well, but you're also, you know, advising about how to communicate with people in China. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about the psychology and the culture of doing business in China. Your,
Uh-huh.
from your understanding, what are some of the main things where that might be different from, you know, how we do business in the UK, the approach, you know, how business might be done in the US? What might be some of the sort of common differences and challenges?
You mean the business between Chinese and UK and America?
Yes, yeah,
Huh, that's a good question because you know there are also differences between UK and America, right?
yes, exactly.
Yeah, so how can I say? Basically, you know, we often separate this world like to the East and the West. And the China is more from the East side, and UK and America is more in the Western side. And in that side is basically, if we say this way, Chinese is the Chinese culture is more in how we say, like we already talked about, we tend to say things not that directly as you do in the West, especially when we have some issues or some thoughts we don't want to discuss openly, especially when we disagree with something. So we may say it like, I will think about it, but that can be an answer of no. It is the same in to UK or in America. We don't say no directly. Let's say this way. But you may got this feeling. You may got this feeling when you communicate with people. You feel like you don't know how to continue the conversation. That means something not right behind. Because they will not say like, I don't agree with you. I'm absolutely against it. We don't say that. It's kind of cultural thing. Like in UK and in the US, like you tend to make everything clear on a contract and everything like explicit. So you mean what you say in most cases, let's say in this way. Uh, in China, it's more like we already talked about. You need sometimes need to read between the lines,
So,
especially when we disagree with something.
so not only do you translate literally from Chinese to English and vice versa, but you translate in a way where you help with those sort of cultural differences as well. So, for example, there's a feeling, you know, in the UK, in
Mhm.
the US, and so on, that if you're not careful, um, you could potentially, without realizing it, cause offense.
Mhm.
Is that something that you help with? Look, just here's a way to, you know, try to kind of meet in the middle and understand um, the way that we like to do business and our culture. Is that part of the service that you provide?
It depends what kind of request from the customer. If they say, "Hey, would like just to have you to help us interpreting our conversations as a Chinese English interpreter, but we don't need any business advice or your source as a third party consultant. Then I will just do the interpretation. But in most cases, my customers do not want me just to be a translator in for the meetings for the languages. They because my value is more in the business side. Because I work with people in different countries, and I also work with different companies in China, including the state-owned companies, private companies, and also some very localized companies, but also some companies if they're already in China for a while. So it's different kind of situations we may encounter. That means you may face different problems. If you need a translator, we have a lot in the market, and they are much cheaper. So we have different price ranges, but my value is more in the business side. So they would like me to be in those meetings to read those atmosphere, and to after the meeting we will discuss how our feelings about it and what kind of messages we are reading through it before my customers will make the decisions.
Yeah. So let's say, for example, let's talk specifically. You've got an American who wants to buy a football club, a company, an organization from a Chinese owner.
Uh-huh.
You've not only got the business dealings that, even if it's between two people in the UK or two people in the US, there's a lot to it. But when it's when it's a different language, when it's a different
Uh-huh.
culture, it can become more complex, I'm guessing. And so let's say, for example, somebody comes to you and says, look, I'm American, I'm based in the US, I'm looking to buy this company or this organization that's owned by someone who's Chinese. What would your advice be on a good way to do business with somebody who's Chinese, who owns a business or an organization that somebody in the US wants to buy? What would be your advice on how to approach that?
I think the first thing they need to do is to build the trust. I mean, which means like you could let the Chinese business owner knows like, hey, I'm interested in you and in your business. I'd like to know more, but not like I'm here to buy you. And it's not like that yet because you do not have the trust. So basically, the doing business in China and in the West is a little bit different. It's like how we can say this way, the trust building process is a little bit different. Like I'm not sure if you have heard this word 关系 relationship in China. It's very important in making business decisions because we have these biddings in China, right, for a project, the biddings. But before the biddings, we spend some time to get to know the company before we send any proposals and the person in the company. If possible, you can get some personal connections. That will help. So similar to this case, this American owner who want to buy the Chinese company, before the business will be discussed in details, your proposals and how you would like to make it happen, I would recommend to talk to the business owner to get to know the business owner, to get to know about this person, because it is also the process for you as the future like potential owner get to know if it could be a good business for you, good deal for you. I mean the trust building process. That's very important.
So we've got a very interesting situation now. So the dynamic that we had recently was, so you've got a Chinese owner of a
Yeah.
professional football club in the UK
Yes.
and then the potential owner is American. So
Yeah.
it's not just the fact that, it's somebody who owns a Chinese company. It's a Chinese businessman who owns a professional football club in the UK, and the potential owner is American. Um, so what's happened is the current owner,
Mm.
he bought the club in 2017, and the club was doing very well then, and his ambition was to take the club into the Premier League, and then the value of the club becomes much higher. But what happened was he put a lot of money into the club, hundreds of millions of pounds. I think it was something like he's put in something like £250 million during this time as the owner. But it didn't translate to success on the pitch. So then the team got relegated. So the value is less now than when he bought the club. So is there something about the Chinese culture in general where um that you don't like to lose face, for example? This is something that I've heard, and in that instance, if something goes wrong with that business, and the Chinese owner of that business or that organization is then trying to sell, um how would you advise an American coming in, or someone from another country to deal with that, to be sensitive towards that situation in terms of getting a result of you know uh, getting the deal done? What have you got any advice in that scenario?
Um, I dig a little bit about a Reading football club and the owner, Chinese owner. If this happened like since 2022, about that time, because I dug a little bit information about that company, the owners, and um I got this information. It's like they have facing some financial challenges back then already. So from my side, it's more like for them, if they say I'm giving up Reading FC right now, it's more of a business decision. Like you say, they think Reading FC is not that valuable as they perceived when they bought it. So they are just trying to making the business decision. We can say in this way. It's more of a business decision rather than just a culture thing, because they also need to survive from the market, from the competition.
Yeah, because we had a lot of problems with what we were hearing was that it's quite difficult sometimes to get money out of China to other countries.
Yeah.
And because so the staff were being paid late. I mean, this isn't, me just kind of telling you this. This is public knowledge. Um, so the tax bills weren't being paid on time, etc. So we were, as a club, as a team, we were deducted points. Um, and the season before last, uh, those points deductions actually meant that we got relegated into a lower division.
Yeah.
Um, so now the thought is that our current owner would just like to, get what he can for the club. He's still got a valuation. We think it's about 30 million. Um, so in terms of a new owner, a potential new owner,
Yes.
um, how would you recommend, whether they come from the UK, the US, from Australia, from Europe, from Asia, from South America, and anywhere? What would you recommend as the starting point for building that trust, building that relationship?
Basically, I think if for any intended buyers for Reading FC, those buyers are already see the value of you. So for them, it's more like they need to make the current owner be interested to transfer the ownership to them. We can say in this way. So before the deal will concluded, which means, like we already talked about it, which means they need to make the current owner believes it's a good deal for them. Because if the current owner says like, I'm not getting anything from this, it's not good, it's not a good business for me at all, he will not do it. So before agreeing this transfer of the business, like we already talked about, it's still needed to build the trust, even personal connections. It means if you get the trust, and maybe you can be the friends even, they will be easier to talk to. Once they have trust you, they will talk to you. And you can get more information than you needed. That will help you to make better decision. It takes time, but it helps.
That sounds like really good advice, and that sounds like great advice in general, not just a cultural thing. I think that's a really good way to do business in general. The saying universally is people buy from people.
Yes.
Whether it's a business deal or or a product or a service or whatever it might be. So let's say, for example, that our current owner has been introduced to someone who's interested in buying the club, and they decide to take those negotiations further with a view to completing the transaction. When it gets to an advanced stage and they're talking about the terms and conditions, what would your advice be at that stage?
You were talking about they are in the negotiation phase of conditions and terms. So my recommendation for that, for the negotiation.
Because so what our understanding is that an initial agreement happened. So there was an initial offer by the American. To all intents and purposes, it was accepted in principle. And then what happened, how we understand it, is that the potential owner started asking for discounts and started trying to lower the price. And we think what happened was that the current owner said, well, no, that's not acceptable. When it gets to such an advanced stage and you've got an agreement in principle, what would your advice be to get that deal over the line?
So what you were talking about is like now they already have an offer to the current owner, but the price is not that promising, let's say in this way, for both sides yet.
Yes.
Because the new owner wants to have a discount, but the current owner does not want to give that, because
that's exactly right.
Because he think he is giving the reasonable price. So the new buyer is trying to bargain, we can say this way. I actually could understand what the current owner thinks. It's normal, right? Because when we are the seller, we always want to keep our price, because it is some price we have calculated carefully with a lot of data and all those factors. But for the new owner, they also have their price, because they think this is the value we perceive it. So that's our offer. So now you have the gap in between. And here's like here, so the situation is how we can close that gap, or even we come a little bit to the middle. So we can close the deal, right? Because I'm not the owner, so it's a little bit difficult to understand what hinders this deal right now. Is it really the existing price or existing offer they think is not the idea yet? They are waiting for a better offer, or is it they are not that in a rush to sell Reading FC? It depends what kind of reasons hinder them from this agreement.
Well, we've got a very interesting situation as well. It's quite complex because our previous owner was is Thai.
Yeah, Thailand.
The previous owner to that is Russian.
Yeah.
The previous to that is you know, he was based, he is based in Reading, so so it's his club, it's his local club. And then the club was sold to a Russian, and then it was sold to Thai owners, and then to the Chinese owner. One of the complications we have is that the previous owners, the Thai owners, they still own a part of the land. So my understanding is that they own the area where there's the car park. So somebody coming in can't buy the whole, you know, the stadium and the land. And the hotel is different ownership. So it's quite complex. So I think what we're talking about here is there are cultural aspects to this, but also there's, you know, it could be the same complications if it's an American trying to buy a company off another American, or someone in the UK trying to buy a company off another person in the UK. There's some standard universal principles in play. But just talk to me about perhaps any slight differences in culture, and the way somebody in China might do business with a Thai business person, for example. Because what we kind of hope will happen eventually is that somebody will buy the club, and then acquire the other part, the other bit of the land from the previous owner, the Thai owner. So are there kind of cultural differences between, you know, Chinese business culture and Thai business culture, for example?
How we can say this way, even we both from East Asia, and Thai is from Southeast Asia, actually a little bit south from us. There's still cultural differences, of course. Not even, but I mean the gap may be smaller than China between the West. But beyond the cultural differences, we also need to think about the factors like we are all individuals. So it might have personality differences as well, even you come from the same culture. So from your perspective, my understanding is like you are expecting the new owner could acquire all the shares from the Thai as well. So he could get 100% of Reading FC and all those facilities, the hotels, the playground, all those things.
Yeah, I think it's just an interesting, very complex situation that we found ourselves in. But just finally, you know, I wanted to ask you, we obviously had this deal 2 weeks ago, that fell through. If somebody comes in, apart from the universal, you know, way of doing business, which is to agree, you know, to negotiate and then to agree the terms and conditions and sign everything. That's universal, that's standard. So there are those elements at play.
Yeah.
What would be the best piece of advice that you could give a potential new owner of Reading Football Club who wants to buy the club from the current Chinese owner?
Mm-hmm.
What would be the best single piece of advice that you could give that individual about how to, bring that deal to the table and how to get it done in terms of, Chinese business culture, Chinese culture? What would be your best piece of advice in that situation?
Because I don't know that much about the details about this deal. What I know is like I also don't know if this American new owner would like to be interested, like you said, also acquire all the shares from the Thai as well, or they just want to acquire the share from the current owner. That will be a different story. It means they will only need to talk to the Chinese, or they also need to talk to the Thai, or the Chinese will handle the conversations with the Thai inside. That will be different situations and different details and informations and conditions. We don't know because I don't know that much about this deal. So it really depends what kind of expectations this American owner is having. They are expecting to acquire all the shares from your current owner, from the Chinese owner. If they are doing this, if they are expecting doing this, they can do things like we already talked about. But if they also want to take 100% of the Reading FC, that will be a different.
Yeah, I think that it might go in stages. So I think the first thing is to acquire the shares
Yes.
from Dai Young first,
Mm-hmm.
and then once that's in place, maybe look at striking up dialogue with the Thai ownership of that part of the land, etc. But I'd like to finish off by giving some advice to the potential new owner.
Uh-huh.
You've got, anyone coming in, we as football fans,
Mm.
you need to have an understanding of football. So it's like if you're a tech entrepreneur, you've got knowledge
Uh-huh.
of tech, you want to buy a tech company, you
Yeah.
know, you know that subject. If you're a tech entrepreneur who
Mm-hmm.
who has had no business dealings in football, then you need to learn. So my advice, firstly, would be for a potential new owner coming in, that it needs to be somebody who either understands football already,
Mm-hmm.
or if they don't, then they should appoint a consultant who does understand football to talk about, football as a business, because it's very different from other types of businesses. So an entertainment business is very different from a tech business, for
Mm.
example, a manufacturing business, etc.,
Of
etc.
course.
A
Yeah.
football club is very different, but buying a football club in the UK is very different from buying a sports club in the US, because there's no
Mm-hmm.
promotion and relegation in the US. So your investment is safer in a way. A
Mm-hmm.
prime example with Reading Football Club, that when
Mm-hmm.
the Chinese owner bought the club, you know,
Yeah.
we were doing very well. We had a chance to go into the Premier League. We got to the playoff final. We lost, and then it's kind of been a decline since then. So there's a difference even between different sports in different countries, etc. But my
Mm-hmm.
my advice also, whether it's a potential owner from America, from the UK, from Europe, wherever it is, that they
Mm-hmm.
be speaking to either somebody like you or actually speak to you. So,
Mm-hmm.
with that in mind, Sunny, where if anyone did want your advice, how can they find you? How can they, communicate with you in terms of if they're interested in talking to you about how to proceed with a deal?
Um, I am available on LinkedIn, and also I have both personal website and company website.
Okay.
So,
You want to give out your website address in case somebody wants to contact you, or just contact you via LinkedIn?
uh, I'm both okay because I'm getting contacts both from LinkedIn and my
Yeah.
website.
Okay. So the advice to any potential owner of Reading Football Club is firstly, understand football. If you don't already, find a way to understand it, consult with someone, and then contact somebody who knows how to do business with people, with companies in China. For example, Sunny Shen. So, Sunny, what's your website address?
Um, I will give you my personal website. It's much easier to remember.
Okay.
It's chinabusinesspartner.biz.
ChinaBusinessPartner.biz.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I like it. It's very special one, biz.
Well, it says we have a phrase in the UK. There was a TV advert advertising our product.
Uh-huh.
And so the saying is, it does what it says on the tin. So I think that's the same with your business. You're a Chinese business expert. You've given us a really interesting insight into potential cultural differences. But I think what you said, actually, a lot of it is universal, where ultimately one party who's selling something, whether it's an organization, a football club, a company, whatever it might be, even if it's a second-hand car, for example,
Of
you've got
course.
you've got your valuation of it, and then somebody comes in. Of course, they're going to want the best price.
Of
But,
course.
whether the owner of that car, of that football club, of that business, of that organization is Chinese or American, or from the UK, wherever, a lot of this really is about getting a deal that's good for both parties. um and that's what we hope is going to happen for Reading Football Club. So, Sonny, really interesting to get an insight from you. Appreciate your time, your many hours ahead of us, so appreciate you giving up some of your time to talk to us, and thank you very much for joining us.